They say, kill your darlings. They never said, make them into an audiobook. But this is exactly what I did. You know, I wrote 3 flashback chapters in 2024 and 2025 and then realized I can't use them because they would slow down the whole plot. And I'm well aware that Jingyi is not your favorite character in my fanfic. So I made it my first ever fully English audiobook with Chinese names. I must be crazy that I did that to myself. Also, the audio of the first chapter isn't great at all, since this was the time when my Samsung tablet and phone both broke and I had to work with hardware and software from 2012 to record it. Chapters 2 and 3 of Buddhists and Sinners and The Keychain to Misery will sound more like what I'm recording right now. So now I hope you enjoy Once Upon a Betrayal. Jingyi found herself inside an old memory. As a small child, she crossed the huge yard of their employing master's and mistress's house. All the other members of her family were hustling and bustling, doing all kinds of chores, with her turtle demon mother giving instructions.
How old have you been there?
The mysterious invader of her mind asked. Finally, the voice had gotten a face. Next to Jingyi, inside her own memory, stood a humanoid dragon in noble attire with long, jet black hair, laid in tiny, accurate curls falling over his royalty-clad shoulders, wearing a tubular golden headdress. It was no one else but Lord Apsu himself. She just didn't know that. I must have been 5 or 6 years old. He smiled and nodded. From behind a pillar came an elderly noble fox demoness and approached her.
Good that I found you, my child, she cooed. You can do an important task for me.
Actually, I had been set up for a couple of errands around the house, Jingyi explained to Apsu, but never could I have declined that order. She was the future mother-in-law to the mistress and master's 7th daughter.
Will you please deliver that basket of gifts and my litter to the bride, my dear?
The mother-in-law asked. The tiny Jingyi bowed before her.
Yes, I will deliver them to my mistress, Princess Yin Mihong, Lady Wu Leijing. Please make sure that the princess is alone in her chambers. Otherwise, you have to return the basket to me instead. This is very, very important. Do you hear me?
The Lady Wu Leijing asked sternly.
Yes, my mistress,
little Jingyi replied, bowing.
Oh, don't waste any time. I've got an inkling the princess is alone by herself now,
the mother-in-law said. So little Jingyi rushed to the princess' chambers. She knocked at her door.
My mistress, may I enter? Hereby I deliver you a basket of gifts from your future mother-in-law, the noble lady Wu Lejing. Jing Mihan was just writing a letter. She put her quill aside and said, "Please come in." "Oh, what a lovely surprise!" she exclaimed, accepting the basket. She placed it on her vanity and took out cake, wine, fragrance, and a comb of blue jade, nephrite, with delicate floral ornaments carved in. Her eyes glistened, turning this beautiful piece of jewelry in her small paws. Jingyi was thinking of her many other duties and wanted to excuse herself. "Oh, no. You stay right there," the princess ordered. "You have to deliver my mother-in-law a grateful note in return, and the other letter I'm currently writing." The little turtle knew she would get in trouble for delaying her other errands, but she had to obey their employers and his extended family first. The lovely fox spirit put her comb into her artfully arranged, lush amber and white hair and observed herself in the mirror from all angles. Then she froze, her eyes in shock, gasping for air. Jingyi looked up confused. Princess Jingmihong rose up her torso and clenched her fingers like she was trying to get up from her chair, but instead lost balance and fell to the ground. "Mistress, mistress!" the little servant yelped. Then she ran out on the yard, calling for help, and then guilt-ridden back into the princess' chambers. But the sight awaiting her there would haunt her for the rest of her life. The fox princess laid on the floor and had turned to stone. Only the comb stood out, glistening coldly blue. The other gifts in the basket had turned into despicable things, rotting flesh and bones, riddled with worms and maggots crawling over the pretty vanity, a viper slithering through the mess. The little girl held her breath. She was petrified with horror. She pressed her hands against her mouth for not to scream. Then she looked around and ran as fast as she could out on the yard through a garden door into the jungle. "That was so stupid of me," Jingyi said, massaging her temples. "I just could have stayed and pretended that I never had delivered the basket in the first place, that she just called me in to deliver a letter for her. But I felt like an accomplice myself and didn't want my parents to pay for my misfortune."
Well, at such young age, children are bad liars.
"I should have stayed anyway."
You don't know in which way things could have turned sour. Accusing the mother-in-law could have costed your family their positions.
The scenery changed. The little demon girl steered through the jungle looking for edible berries and hiding under large leaves from the rain. She had shape-shifted into her humanoid form so that her family wouldn't recognize her. the scenery changed again. Now the unlikely duo found themselves at a beautiful misty mountain where the clear fresh water sprung right out of the rocks. Little humanoid Ying cupped her small hands and used them to drink from the spring. But she wasn't alone. A Buddhist nun with a bucket was walking the pathway of the mountain. At first she believed to see an ordinary child drinking from the fountain, but then she spotted Jingyi's hands, webbed fingers with sharp claws, showing shimmering skin in gradients of red and purple. The nun took a deep breath. She considered herself in front of a demon, rightfully so. She was a Wangliang of all things. The nun formed a mudra with her hands and chanted a sutra against evil spirits. She stepped closer to the child and spoke louder. The girl looked at her startled, eyes wide. But since the nun hadn't told her she was forbidden to drink from the spring, she kept on drinking. The nun realized the child felt intimidated, but it did not show the reaction the Buddhist woman had expected upon the exorcism she had performed on them. So she waited for the kid to leave until she filled her bucket with water. A few days later, the nun found the demon child again, drinking from the fountain. It was dirty, and their clothes were ravaged by thorns and branches. So the nun spoke to the little Jingyi. "My child, since you withstand the sacred words and mudras, you can't be entirely evil. If you are willing to do all kinds of chores at our temple and to follow the teachings of Buddha eagerly, we will provide you food and shelter among us. Do you accept the offer?" The child blinked at her for a while in surprise, but then agreed. "See," Jingyi asked Lord Apsu, "I'm fully reliant on people's compassion and humbleness."
Look closer.
The Yao guy saw herself growing up and caring for crops, vegetables and fruits in the garden, cooking, washing and cleaning the temple.
Do you realize how useful you was for these lands?
He asked. The turtle wasn't impressed in the slightest. We all worked and provided for our own. We were Shan Buddhists. We didn't depend on the offers of citizens who lived in villages far away. She snubbed him. But Apsu just smiled, his red eyes glowing brighter. The abbess who had found and invited Jingyi was shown to teach her the basics of Wing Chun. Other nuns, the bhikkhunis, and the newbies, the samoneris, protested against that. "She is a demon, an evil spirit. She's not even old enough to receive an ordination. Why do you teach her to fight? She's already way too dangerous yet," they cried. "Oh, is she?" the abbess asked calmly. You might be afraid of her ever-growing claws and beak, but a cruel man devoted to Mara won't bother and hurt her anyway, especially when he realizes she's not human. So the abbess kept training her self-defense. Xingji sighed, looking at this memory. The Wing Chun lessons were a far cry from the hard Shaolin training I endure now.
It was so much nicer and more effective, right?
Lord Apsu purred, sounding half like a cat and half like a crocodile. Yes, she moaned longingly. Now they looked at her remembrance of the terrible incident with the bhikkhuni who committed arson, only to blame Xingyi for causing bad luck. The demoness hid her face and wept. "Look how harmful my influence was," she sobbed. "I scared these nuns so much that they set part of their own home on fire, fearing I could do things much worse to them when I stay at the temple."
Do you really believe that?
The Dragon Lord asked, more than skeptical.
I am sorry, but you really have to expand your horizons. You are way too self-centered.
The mother turned to him, listening attentively. Now he was speaking her language.
All you see is yourself and how the people react to you. You constantly hear dunning voices from your past in your head, telling you what's right and wrong, always afraid of being a bad Buddhist nun or falling from people's grace. So you never see the bigger picture. You blindly follow your idea of great compassion, but you gravely lack true empathy.
He looked her straight into the eye and said,
Empathy is something else than sympathy, mercy, or compassion. It means to understand what the other person actually feels and thinks, and you are incapable of that. You assume that others think and feel like you yourself, and you take them at their words in the literal sense. You have to learn to read between the lines. So, you really believe that woman's reasoning to set her own home on fire was to protect herself from things worse than what you could cause? Think again. In medieval times in Europe, people blamed everything that went wrong on witches. Livestock got sick? Witches. Crops died? Witches. Spouse cheated? Witches. Children died? Witches. Every tragedy you could possibly imagine? Witches. So you could say witches were extremely useful, since people could use them as scapegoats for everything. You was a very welcome servant and scapegoat for the nuns. There was no one to blame except for themselves before you came. Have you ever considered that?
The demoness still stared at him, mouth and eyes wide open.
You stumbled from being a literal child, right? into the concept of self-improvement without ever learning the human nature itself in the first place. This is probably why you are so obsessed with telenovelas. They are overloaded with betrayal and egoism. It's almost exotic to you. Despite you being surrounded by such behavior all your life without realizing it. But that's the magic. In a TV show, it is depicted in such an obvious and exaggerated way you can't miss it. It's much easier to miss in real life.
There she was listening to a fellow yokai who had invaded her mind without introducing himself and was blown away by his insights. Together they traveled through the years of her life. They witnessed her ordination to a Zameneris and saw the old abbess on her deathbed and a new abbess stepping into her place. Xingyi began to cry again. From then on, things went downhill.
The other nuns denied me joining temple service, and I was demoted to household and garden chores only. They just didn't dare to kick me out. They kept me due to respect to their late abbess.
Until this one fateful day.
Apsu finished her sentence.
Yes,
She sniffed. Now they went through these events predating this very morning.
Abbess, I'm afraid someone might tell on us,
one bhikkhuni said.
Sister Rougi had to defend herself today against an attacker in the woods. He might take revenge on us and tell the authorities in the city that our monastery still practices the martial arts that are now prohibited by the emperor.
Some other nuns began to panic.
They might destroy the temple.
The abbess showed a very earnest expression, but stayed calm. Let us meditate about that and seek support and insight. A few days later, Xingyi woke up to an abandoned temple. She walked around and called the other nuns. The turtle discovered that the nuns had taken all their stocks and supplies and had left her behind. Xingyi tried to soothe herself with meditation, but always again broke down, wailing like a little girl. As she finally ran out of tears, she continued life as usual, taking care of the crops and the temple, cooking and washing, now all by herself. One day she had just brewed herself a tea. She heard the drum of hooves coming near the temple. That wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. Soon soldiers stormed the temple, uttering war cries, shooting with their rifles in all directions, wielding burning torches. Xingyi used her magic powers to shapeshift into a tiny feral turtle hiding under a pot and eventually escaping into the wilderness as the mane plundered the temple for goods and tore down its walls.